All right. So we're back and ready to dive in. We're taking a look at, a really interesting time, actually, the first few days of Trump's second term.
Yeah, a second term.
It always
It
kind of tells you something.
it does.
Right? Like, is it going to be more of the same or are we going to see something completely different?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got excerpts from this live AP News article,
Yeah.
and it was constantly being updated during, those first 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it gets wild like right away.
A second term is always super revealing, I think.
Yeah.
It can either mean a doubling down or like a hard pivot in a totally new direction.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah, so we're going to be kind of like political code breakers today.
I like that.
Looking for those early signals, trying to figure out
Absolutely.
what they might mean for for everybody.
Yeah.
And where else to start than with Trump and immigration? Like one of the first things that I saw in the AP article that was just like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah. Was this immediate halt to refugee resettlement?
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
the thing that really gets me is that they literally like canceled the plans of refugees who had already been approved.
Yeah.
Like they were ready to travel to the U.S.
Like they were ready to go.
We're talking people who had already sold everything, said goodbye to their families,
Wow.
and were about to start their lives over.
Yeah. The article even mentions this really, sad example about over 1,600 Afghans who were trying to escape the Taliban.
Right.
Hoping to find refuge in America.
Absolutely.
And now they're just stuck.
Yeah, it's like their whole future's up in the air.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, about the human cost of these policies.
Right.
But it also, it asks some bigger questions about what America's role is in the world.
Right.
I mean, this sudden shift, it was a huge change in U.S. refugee policy.
Yeah.
And it could really mess things up, with diplomatic relations and global migration.
Yeah. What does it mean for America's reputation?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
As a place where people can, find a better life.
Yeah, like a beacon of hope, right?
Right. But now it's not just about refugees, though.
Right.
Trump also signed this executive order to dismantle all these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
What, the EI?
Yeah, DEI initiatives across the entire federal government.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did he move so fast?
It was so quick.
Like, bam, done.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really symbolic move, and I think it speaks to the bigger political climate.
Okay.
There's definitely like a backlash brewing against all this DEI stuff,
Interesting.
fueled by, all these debates about affirmative action and, the role of race in America.
Makes sense.
The article even quotes the Congressional Black Caucus chair, Yvette Clarke,
Oh, yeah.
and she called this executive order an attempt to take our country backward.
It definitely feels like part of this bigger fight
Oh, yeah, for sure.
about what it means to be American.
Totally.
And you know who gets to decide that? Yeah.
100%. And it makes you think about, who's going to be represented
Right.
and what opportunities are going to be out there.
Especially in the government, right?
Right. Especially in the federal government. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how will this, affect workforce diversity?
Exactly. Exactly.
Will it be even harder
Yeah.
to get talented people from underrepresented groups to, apply
Right.
to want to work there?
Big questions.
Big questions.
And, they could have huge consequences.
Yeah. And then there's the pardons.
Oh, yeah.
Over 1,500 of them,
Wow.
all related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Yeah, that was controversial from the get-go.
Oh, instantly.
Yeah.
So much controversy.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the legal and ethical side of things.
Yeah.
I mean, pardoning people convicted of serious crimes, many of whom, let's be honest, were violent.
Right.
It raises questions about accountability,
Right.
and the rule of law.
And it just seems kind of strange to me because, Trump always calls himself a friend of police, but he's pardoning people who attacked police officers.
Yeah, it's hard to square those two things.
It is. It is.
Makes you wonder, how can you do both of those things? And what does it say about where we are politically?
Yeah.
Like facts and logic seem to have taken a back seat
Right.
to just pure emotion
For sure.
and ideology.
Yeah, it's a puzzle.
It is. It is.
And the AP article gives us some, some interesting pieces. Like, they point out that House Speaker Mike Johnson just completely refused to even criticize the pardons.
Wow. So even when there are, these ethical red flags,
Yeah.
people are hesitant to challenge Trump.
It seems that way.
Interesting.
So it sounds like,
Yeah.
these pardons are more than just a legal thing, right?
It's
They're a sign of something bigger,
definitely
deeper division.
It's like we're split right down the middle.
Right, exactly. Okay, let's move on to another big topic, immigration enforcement. The article mentions this Justice Department directive to investigate any local officials who try to get in the way of immigration enforcement.
Oh, so this is bringing back the whole sanctuary city debate.
Yes.
Which is basically about, places that don't cooperate with federal immigration authorities.
Right.
It's a classic states' rights versus federal power struggle.
Right.
And people have really strong opinions on both sides.
Yeah, and it's not just, a legal argument, right? It's about people's lives,
Absolutely.
their safety,
Totally.
Their sense of belonging.
Exactly.
And the article highlights this AP-NORC poll that shows just how complicated public opinion is on immigration.
Okay.
A lot of Americans actually support stronger border security.
Makes sense.
But they're not as keen on arrests happening in sensitive locations.
Like what kind of places?
Like churches and schools.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like people want secure borders.
Yeah.
But they also want immigrants to be treated humanely.
It's a tough balance.
It is a tough balance.
And that tension is at the heart of this whole immigration debate.
Right.
And it's all right there in that Justice Department directive.
It really makes you wonder how this directive is going to actually play out,
Yeah.
Like, will it make federal and local authorities work better together?
Right.
Or will it just make people trust law enforcement even less?
Especially in immigrant communities.
Exactly.
Yeah, these are big questions.
Big questions, yeah.
That we need to think about carefully.
And, speaking of power dynamics, I think one of the big themes here is, Trump pushing the limits of presidential power.
I totally agree. We see it in his approach to immigration.
Uh-huh.
His use of executive orders and his willingness to just throw out the old rule book.
Right, right.
And it raises a crucial question for all of us. What does this mean for the presidency itself?
Yeah.
And for the balance of power in our government?
That is a huge question.
Huge.
And one that we will definitely be looking at more in part 2 of this deep dive, so make sure you stick around. Okay, so we're back, and we're still unpacking these first 72 hours of Trump's second term.
Still so much to cover.
I know, and we're just talking about how, he seems to be testing the limits of presidential power.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And it's not even just about, how many executive orders he's signing. It's about, what they're about.
The sheer scope, yeah.
Yeah, he's taking on these huge, really controversial issues.
What? Give me an example.
Like immigration, citizenship.
Wow.
Even social media.
It's a lot.
It is. It is.
So let's dig into some of these executive orders.
Okay, so we talked about immigration in the last part.
Right.
But there's this one that seems to challenge birthright citizenship.
Oh, yeah, that one's a biggie.
What's the deal with that?
Well, it basically tries to limit birthright citizenship for kids born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants.
Hold on, but isn't that
It's a direct challenge to the 14th Amendment.
Right, which guarantees citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to go around the Constitution with an executive order.
So is that even allowed?
Well, that's the big question.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to face some serious legal challenges.
So this could end up in the courts.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something a little lighter, but still making a lot of noise. The executive order on TikTok.
TikTok, yeah.
So everyone knows it's super popular.
Everyone's on it.
But it's owned by a Chinese company, and that's where things get messy.
Yeah, there have been a lot of concerns about data privacy.
Right, could the Chinese government access user data?
Exactly.
Interesting.
And, the Biden administration was looking into maybe banning it nationwide.
Wow.
But Trump's order basically lets TikTok keep operating in the U.S.
Huh. So what's the reason for that?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Is he just trying to protect American businesses, or is there something else going on?
Hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But it could be seen as a power move.
Okay, how so? He's showing everyone he's willing to do things his way.
Interesting.
Even if it means going against what the intelligence agencies are saying.
Or what previous presidents have done.
Exactly.
So it's another example of him testing the limits of his power.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And it kind of makes you feel like we're in uncharted territory.
Oh, absolutely. We've never seen a president operate like this before. Right. And it makes us rethink the whole idea of how the presidency works.
And what the limits of executive power should be.
Okay, so we've got immigration, birthright citizenship, TikTok.
Hitting all the hot topics.
Let's circle back to immigration for a sec.
Okay.
Because there's another executive order that caught my eye. The one about immigration officials being able to make arrests in sensitive locations.
Oh, yeah. That one's controversial for sure.
So the Biden administration had these policies in place that limited arrests in certain places.
Right, like churches, schools, hospitals.
Yeah, because they said it created too much fear in the community.
And it kept people from getting the services they needed.
Right, exactly.
And Trump's order basically reverses all of that.
So what happens now?
Well, a lot of people are worried that it's going to make immigrant communities even more afraid.
Like they won't even take their kids to school or go to the doctor.
Exactly. They'll be too scared of being detained or deported.
And it could damage the trust between law enforcement and those communities.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah. How do you balance security concerns with human rights?
And individual liberties.
It's a debate that never seems to go away.
Nope. It's been going on forever, and it's probably going to keep going on.
Speaking of balancing competing interests, let's go back to the executive order on DEI.
Oh, yeah. The DEI debate.
What could happen if we roll back all those initiatives?
A lot of people are talking about that.
Yeah?
The people who support DEI say those programs are super important.
Okay.
They say they help create a fairer and more just society.
Makes sense, but the critics say
They say it's reverse discrimination and that it goes against meritocracy.
it feels like this issue is bringing up all this anxiety and resentment
Oh, for sure.
about race and opportunity in America.
It's a sensitive topic.
It is. It is. And it's even more complicated because there's no agreement on what DEI actually means.
Right, like how do you define it?
Yeah, and how do you put it into practice?
It's all up for interpretation.
And that can lead to a lot of confusion and misunderstanding.
Definitely. So I think this executive order is more than just a policy change.
Yeah.
It's like a cultural earthquake
Right.
that's forcing us to face some hard truths about who we are as a nation.
That's a really good way to put it.
Thanks.
And it reminds us that politics is about more than just laws.
It's about our values
Our identity.
and what we want the future to look like.
So basically, these first few days of Trump's second term,
Yeah.
they're like a tiny version of all the big political and cultural fights happening in America.
I think that's a really insightful observation.
Thanks.
By looking at these actions, we can get a better understanding of what's shaping our society.
And what challenges we're facing as a country.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We've been busy.
But there's still so much more to explore.
Always more to uncover.
We'll continue our analysis in part 3.
Can't wait.
And we'll dig into what these early moves by Trump could mean in the long run.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into these first 72 hours of Trump's second term. It's been a whirlwind.
It really has.
You know, we've been trying to decipher all the political signals and analyze his early actions, trying to get a sense of where he's taking the country.
And I think one thing's for sure, Trump is not afraid to use his power
No, he's not.
to get things done, you know? Like, he's really willing to use the full force of the presidency.
We've definitely seen that in his approach to immigration.
Absolutely.
You know, his challenge to birthright citizenship, even how he's handled TikTok. It's like he's pushing the limits,
Yeah, like he's seeing how far he can go.
within the boundaries.
And what's really interesting is that a lot of Americans seem to be okay with it. Yeah, it's like we're seeing this whole reshaping of the political landscape.
Like the old lines are being redrawn.
So what does this new landscape look like? What are the big changes?
Well, one of the most obvious is the rise of executive power.
Okay, how so?
Trump's shown he's willing to bypass Congress
Right.
and just use executive orders to get his agenda through, even on really controversial stuff.
And nobody in his own party seems to be stopping him.
Nope, the Republicans have pretty much fallen in line behind him, even when things get a little legally or ethically questionable.
Yeah, it feels like the Republican Party is shifting.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely moving towards a more populist, nationalist kind of approach.
And what about the Democrats? How are they dealing with all of this?
I think they're struggling, to be honest.
Yeah.
They're trying to block Trump's agenda, of course, through the courts and public pressure.
Makes sense.
But I don't think they've figured out a clear alternative yet. You know, a story that can really compete with Trump's populism.
So we've got a divided government, a really polarized electorate.
And a president who's not afraid to shake things up.
Yeah, it's a lot. What does it all mean for the average American?
Honestly, I think it means we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
It's a time of huge uncertainty and constant change.
Right.
The old rules don't apply anymore, and it feels like anything could happen.
I think that's what's making people so anxious.
Yeah, like the news is just a constant fire hose.
Right.
And it feels like everything's spinning out of control.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. We still have a choice.
Okay.
We can choose to stay informed, to think critically, and to actually participate in the process.
So where do we even start?
Just start asking questions.
Yeah.
Don't just accept everything you hear from the media or politicians.
Right.
Look for different perspectives. Be open to having conversations with people who disagree with you.
It's about finding common ground.
Yeah, even when it feels like everyone's at each other's throats.
Finding those shared values.
Exactly. We have to remember that we're all in this together.
We are. We all have a say in the future of this country.
And we all have a responsibility to make it a good one.
That's a great point to end on. There's still hope.
Always.
We can still come together and make things better. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been fascinating, and we'll be here to break it all down as things develop.
Absolutely. Until next time.